Welcome back to Toffee Booze, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, and today I'm bringing you the extra time match review for Everton 1, West Ham 1. A difficult afternoon on Saturday, which saw the points shared between Everton and West Ham. That being said, it does stretch our unbeaten run to 9 in the league, but there's a lot to unpack for this one, especially with it being a 1-1 game. But probably one of the biggest talking points, and we'll start there, it's the starting 11. I personally didn't expect Moyes to change too much. I definitely didn't expect him to change from the traditional two wingers, which he's been using since he joined Everton. But he did start with Carlos Alcaraz and Abdoulaye Doucouré for the first time together. Obviously, the rest, I think the rest of the starting 11 was expected. I think the defence are playing well. And they seem to be quite comfortable with each other, the defence now. So I think that was probably to be expected to stay the same. But I was definitely shocked to see Lindstrom get dropped, even though Harrison and Lindstrom haven't been playing that well recently. I was definitely surprised to see him get dropped and him go with Alcaraz out wide. But maybe it's due to the reasons I alluded to after Wolves. I think the squad does look tired. It looks a little bit threadbare. So I think it might have been just rotation. I think Lindstrom's played a lot of football in recent months. So that could be one of the reasons why he left him out. But I was, a little bit shocked seeing that going into the game. But that being said, we'll start with the first half. And it was a relatively slow burner, wasn't it, in that first half? A few chances for either side. Beto having a couple of crosses into him, which, the crosses seemed to go behind him and his headers seemed to loop over the bar. They were difficult chances, difficult ones to convert, really. And then up the other end at the Gladys Street end, Pickford keeping out Jarrod Bowen from a fantastic save, which ricocheted off Jarrod Branthwaite. So yeah, as I said before, it was a relatively slow burner, a couple of chances here and there, but nothing really to write home about for either side. But there was a little bit of a flashpoint towards the end of the first half. It was obviously that penalty instant. Beto getting wrestled to the floor. Well, wrestled to the floor as a very loose term talking about that. Beto wrestled to the floor. The referee initially gives a penalty and it obviously goes to VAR. I think in hindsight, watching it back, at the time I didn't think it was a penalty. I think it looked soft from where I was sat. And then watching it back and looking at it, I think it probably wasn't a penalty. I think VAR probably got this one right. This is an instance where I know I've talked about it so many times in recent weeks, but this is an instance where I think VAR was actually used correctly. I think it was used properly. An on-field error from a referee, probably didn't have the best view of it. Recommended to go to the screen to have a look, and he's overturned it. I think that one I can't really complain about because it was a clear and obvious error. And if they're going with this adage of a clear and obvious error, I think the referee and VAR probably got that one right. Better did just kick the floor. So I'm not going to complain too much about that one. I don't think it was a penalty. I think there was contact. There was a little bit of contact, but I think it was marginal. And the biggest thing that got Beto to the floor, I think, was him kicking the ground. So I'm not going to complain too much. I'm going to keep impartial and say that yeah, VAR did get this one right. I know I do a lot of complaining about referees, and I'll get on to complaining about the referee himself further on in the video. But I think on this instance and this isolated incident, I think he probably got this one right, and VAR were correct to intervene and correct protocols, I think, were followed. But that being said, that wrapped up the first half. And at half time, I was thinking like it did need someone to take the game by the scruff of the neck and win it. I think the game was massively there for the taking. But one thing I did notice was, and I talked about it at the start of the video with the starting lineup thoughts, obviously Doucouré and Alcaraz playing together for the first time. I don't think they work together. I think they kind of find themselves in the same position, the same opportunities, and I think they just get under each other's feet. And I think it's counterproductive having them in the same team because I think they do a very similar job. They're very good for energy. They're very good for setting a press in defence. I think Alcaraz is absolutely fantastic with his energy, and Doucouré at times. I think defending as a block and setting that press. I think Doucouré is very good at that. But that being said, I just don't think they work together. I don't think you're getting the best of Carlos Alcaraz out wide, and I don't think you're getting the best out of Doucouré because Alcaraz keeps drifting in because that's what he knows. So I think in hindsight, Moyes probably would have wanted to start Lindstrom. He obviously did make that change relatively quickly into the second half with Lindstrom coming on for Doucouré and Alcaraz going central. But that being said, I think the biggest thing I was thinking from that first half is that they do seem to be getting under each other's feet and they don't really work together, which is fine. I think they're players that are going to be in a similar position. We've just got two decent players in that position now. And when the likes of Dwight McNeil, Iliman and Jai come back, I think you'll probably see one or the other playing. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, I do think the squad at the moment is quite threadbare. And probably the reason why we did see them start together was because of how threadbare and how tired the squad is looking, especially after that Wolves game. I think that the squad was looking really tired. But yeah, my half-time thoughts were thinking, the game is definitely there for the taking, but maybe a change was in order for Doucouré and Alcaraz really to get the best out of them too. But moving into the second half now, it did start quite dry. There was no real chances for either side. I think Jarrod Bowen had one where attempted an overhead kick, and I think he hit himself. But apart from that, there was no real chances for either side. I think it was relatively stalemate for the first 20 minutes of that first for that second half, and obviously until the 67th minute, where the biggest chance of the game probably fell to West Ham. But we'll go into that now. Bowen open on the right hand side. He found Souček with absolutely loads of space in the body, but there was loads of bodies round him, and he finished well into Pickford's far left hand corner and put West Ham ahead. In my opinion, I think this is a very avoidable goal. I think it was a bit of brilliance from Thomas Souček to find the corner under pressure in the box, but I do think we can close him down a lot sooner, and we can also stop the pass going to Jarrod Bowen on that left hand side. And as I said before, it's a very avoidable goal, but it is a good finish. And so many times I'm just saying that I was screaming to someone to close him down because they had so many bodies in the box to get around him, but we just didn't close him down. And Souček, you give him that amount of space in the box. He's shown us so many times in the Premier League, also against Everton, that he can just find the bottom corner so well. And obviously, there's recent rumours about linking him to Everton. I'm hoping we do just sign him just to stop him scoring against Everton in every fixture at Goodison Park. But that being said, going 1-0 down was disappointing with 20 minutes to go. But so many times I've said it in recent videos, Moyes has instilled this attitude in the squad. There's something that Sean Dyche didn't instill in the squad. You look at Palace away, you look at the Merseyside derby. He's instilled this never say die attitude in the squad for me, something that we've not seen for so many years in an Everton squad, where if we do go 1-0 down, heads don't really drop. There's maybe a little bit of a couple of minutes where there's a little bit of a lull, but heads don't drop. We seem to stick to our guns and keep pressuring, and we pressured so well for that last 20 minutes after going behind. And a great cross from Carlos Alcaraz as we ticked over into stoppage time. A great cross from Carlos Alcaraz, finding Idrissa Gueye at the back stick, who fired across towards Jake O'Brien, and he had probably the easiest finish he's ever going to have, tapping into the Gladys Street net with his head. But it made it 1-1. It made it 2 in 3 for Jake O'Brien. He's becoming prolific now for a right back, and it was so good to see us get back into a game, which I think was probably a fair result going into stoppage time. I think being 1-1, it was probably a fair result. I think there wasn't a lot of chances for either side. Both teams were in a relative stalemate for the entire game. So going into stoppage time at 1-1, I think was probably a fair result. But there's a lot to unpack from the wider picture of the game. I think we'll have to talk about officiating as well. I know I've praised VAR and praised the referee for their decision in the first half, even though it was against Everton, and obviously Beto not getting the penalty. We do have to talk about the officiating. I think it was, on the whole, in general, it was so poor. It's just little things, really. There was so many little, for example, Lucas Paquetá. I think the amount of times that he bought a foul where there was no pressure on him really. He was completely just diving to the floor, and so many times where he got away with that. I think it just shows that the standard of officiating is very poor in this country, and little things going against us. Again, I just don't really see how PGMOL can come out and dress it up anymore. I think the standard of officiating really needs to go up in this country, because we're talking about the best league in the world, the Premier League, which we want to have, that stature of being the best league in the world. We want to be able to attract the best players across the world and across Europe. But when the officiating is this poor, and you're comparing it to the officiating in the Champions League, for example, there's no way you can talk about the Premier League being the best league in the world. So I think there's definitely things to improve. But also, I think there was an interesting article on Football Insider today. Keith Hackett, who was talking, and he was saying that he thought the Thomas Souček goal should have actually been ruled out. He said there was a push on Beto in the build-up, and that goal should have been ruled out. So again, it's just showing so many little mistakes that PGMOL and referees in general are getting wrong, and it just shows that the standard of officiating massively needs to go up. But that being said, I've talked about the game as a whole. There was one little flashpoint in extra time which we have to talk about. It was Carlos Alcaraz finding himself free in the box, and he was so unlucky not to put it in the bottom left hand corner of Areola's goal, and that would have topped off a really decent afternoon. But that being said, it was, the points were shared between Everton and West Ham. Probably a fair result. I think it was a tough day at the office for Everton. I think there was probably a lot of things that we could have done better. There was a lot of things we could have done better in defence and attack. But that being said, I think the 1-1 draw was probably a fair result for both teams. I think a stalemate was probably fair. But going into my standout performers, I think there's not really a standout performer in terms of defensive. I think they were all relatively solid. Just that one lapse in concentration, which saw us concede. I think going forward, I think Alcaraz was probably our best player. I think he was our standout. He's just so good with energy, isn't he? The amount he brings going forward, I think he brings a little bit of a different aspect for me in terms of Abdoulaye Doucouré and comparing him to Carlos Alcaraz. I think they bring a little bit of a different dynamic. Alcaraz is so much better with the ball. He finds passes which Abdoulaye Doucouré definitely wouldn't do. And I think once Abdoulaye Doucouré did come off and Jesper Lindstrom came on, I think that's where we saw probably the best of Carlos Alcaraz and his, creativity and his energy. I think that's where we probably saw the best. But that being said, there wasn't really any other stand-up performers. Obviously, Jordan Pickford, the great save from Jarrod Bowen, keeping us in it. I think I can wax lyrical about Jordan Pickford all evening and how good he's been for us this season. But once again, keeping Bowen out and providing fantastic saves all round. I think that shows why Jordan Pickford is England's number one. He's probably one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League. But apart from that, yeah, no real stand-up performers. But there wasn't really a very poor performance. I think it was just a difficult, tough day at the office for Everton, and shows that we are a little bit threadbare and looking quite tired on that pitch. But that being said, there's a well-deserved break now before the small matter of a Merseyside derby on the 2nd of April, and that makes it now 9 unbeaten in the league, which is our longest run since 2017. So long may it continue. Obviously going to Anfield next, so no doubt we'll be making it 10 unbeaten in a row in the league. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about our 1-1 draw against West Ham on Saturday. Obviously, there was a lot to unpack with that one. Considering it was a 1-1 draw, there was a lot of flashpoints and a lot to unpack. But that is all from me today. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.